Okay, I'm gonna tell you a story about what happens usually every other Sunday during the football season. My dad always smokes ribs. And I'm not gonna be biased or anything, but I think they are one of the best ribs I've ever tried. So one Sunday, my friends came over, and my dad was close to being done, and he was like, "You guys want to try some?" My friends had never tried his ribs, so they were like, "Yeah." So my dad made them a plate really fast, and when they bit into it, they were just in awe. I had to pick up their jaws off the floor. Like, they were just like, "Dude, these are so good." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So today, I'm going to demonstrate how to slow smoke ribs. There's 3 important things you need to know about smoking ribs. One is the rub. What you use to rub the ribs in is, I think, one of the most important things. 2 is the type of ribs. There's like 5 different types of ribs you can use to smoke. And 3 is the type of wood. That all just comes down to the other side of the flavor spectrum. So, firstly, I'm going to talk about the rub. What I use when I smoke ribs are my secret ingredient. This is the final form of it. But what I usually use is cumin powder, crushed black pepper, brown sugar, garlic powder, salt, regular sugar, dry mustard, onion powder, paprika, and there's an Asian spice called 5 spice. It has obviously 5 different spices in it. But what I don't have with me are, I forget the ones I don't have, but this is my end. This is my rub right here. So what you want to do is you want to get the ribs and you want to put them on a tray. And what you want to do is there's a membrane on the back of the ribs, and what you want to do is you want to peel that membrane off evenly before you put your rub on, because the membrane will it's basically a membrane, and it won't put all the flavors in the meat when you're smoking them. And so once I take the membrane off, I make all these together, and I usually put my rub in like a bowl. And what you want to do is you want to massage the crap out of those ribs. You want to just deep tissue, get in there. You want to bathe them. You want to slap them on, just bathe them. And so what I usually do is I do it the night before I smoke. So then obviously it takes overnight, and it takes hours for the rub to soak in the ribs. And so once I'm finished, I use saran wrap. Not saran wrap, sorry. I just use foil. And I wrap them in foil, and I throw them back on the tray, and I throw them in the refrigerator. And so the next morning, when they're ready to go, I get the wood, and the wood is the other side of the flavor. Usually, I use mesquite and hickory flavored woods, but you know, if you're an amateur, you won't really know how to handle it. But people don't really use hickory or mesquite is because they can give off a bitter flavor if not handled right. But what I usually do is I get them in bulks, and I cut them up and I peel the bark off, because the bark is basically where all the bitter taste comes from. And so what I do is I grab a separate barbecue and I cut them in pieces, kind of like almost like wood chips. I cut them in pieces and I light them on fire. And while those are sitting, I take my ribs out of my fridge and let them sit for about 20 to 30 minutes until they get to about room temperature, because you don't want to cook them when they're cold. And once I notice that the wood turns into like a coal, really, really dark, really burnt, and that's when I get my smoker ready. I make sure the grill is clean, make sure everything's ready to go. And so what you want to do is you want to cook the ribs between 215 and 225 degrees. So once the coals are ready, you put the coals in the smoker. Well, I use an offset smoker, so the coals go in here and the ribs go in here. So I put the coals in, I look at the temperature gauge to see where it goes in, usually in between. And when I'm ready to go, I just toss the ribs in there and I close it. So this is what everyone hates, is the wait time. I usually smoke them for about 3.5 hours, depending on what type of ribs I use. So while you're sitting there, and that's when the game's on, you know, grab a beer, grab a drink, go watch the game every once in a while. But what I do is I use apple cider, and I periodically spray the ribs. I squirt them, and I flip them periodically so I get both sides of the ribs. And so you can watch the game, squirt them every once in a while, just to get all those flavors in. The type of ribs I usually use are, my personal favorite are baby back. I think baby back gives off a better flavor, but another type of ribs I use are St. Louis style. Baby backs are a little more expensive, so you might have to find them on sale at your market, but St. Louis style have more meat than the baby back ribs, so it all depends what you want to do or what you want to buy. But St. Louis style, you might have to special order them from your butcher at your local market. And also with the St. Louis style is when you cook them, the meat kind of shrinks towards the middle of the ribs, and so the ends are like handles basically for when you're eating them. So once the ribs are in there, I get all my other condiments out and ready to go. And what my other secret ingredient, which I can't really disclose because I'll get killed if I go home, but once the ribs are all done, I get my secret barbecue sauce and I baste them, and then I serve them accordingly. Other ingredients people can use are like cayenne pepper. They could use bay leaves. They could use, oregano. There's plenty of other different types of rubs people can use. It all just depends on what you want to use. But this is what I use. And so I just demonstrated you guys how to smoke ribs. I told you about the rub, the types of ribs you can use, and the wood. I totally forgot about the wood. There's about 10 different types of wood you can use. There's the regular mesquite and hickory, which gives off a bitter taste. And then there's the fruit woods. The fruit woods are apple, cherry, oak, and maple. Usually if it's your first couple times of smoking, you usually want to use the fruit woods because they give off a sweeter taste. So just in case if you mess up, trial and error, your ribs won't taste bitter as if you use hickory or mesquite. So on your next gathering with your friends, instead of going out and partying and getting drunk all the time, why don't you just kick back, hey, find some recipes, find your ingredients, buy some. Hey guys, we're having a barbecue. We're not gonna waste money and buying all these 30 packs and all these bottles. Let's relax, watch the game, have some food, maybe throw a couple back, but all depending on you, and just have a great time.